Korea were experiencing very fast economic development, but now from today's view, so Korea was not fully modernized in the general system of economics. So I can say that Korea were facing the limitations and at that time and became kind of bankrupt at that moment. And with the help of IMF funding, and maybe I understand that was much more connected to United States funds and influence. And the basic requirement of that experience was they were demanding that the Korea to modernize the legal system and the basic trend, how to say, including the bankruptcy law or so kind of new modern kind of legal issues, we were following the United States legal system. And so in addition to that, so um, after 1970s and 80s, Korea, we were experiencing many our own legal issues, and that legal issues has been solved by the Korean judges. And we can say that the Korean court, um, we could say that we had our own collections of precedent or cases. And so when judges were facing new issues or new cases, so they could find some references or precedent, our, our own system. So, I mean, before that, like up until the 1960s or something like that. So I should say that Korea had not much advanced legal system or something like that. At that time, the Korean judges, when they were facing some legal new issues, so they were trying to open Japanese legal books or some German legal books because most legal issues has been already dealt with in that country, and they could find out very easy references from that comparative studies. But as I
So in
mentioned,
the
okay,
so my question, if that's the case, can the defendant raise the point that the judge basing their judgment on a previous case in a different country is unfair towards them because the logistics and the environment is different, and thus they would try to dismiss this judgment based on the fact that it's not in the same country or not from the same legal background? Can they
okay,
do that?
yeah, sure. That is good question. So in this sense, as I were explaining right before, so Korea is having kind of the hybrid system of civil law traditions and common law tradition. So in Korea, the prior enacted legislation is very important, but also the present and many cases are also very huge references to Korea. But as you are curious, so how much the foreign legislations or foreign directives, for example, EU kind of directive or EU GDPR, so it cannot be directly taken as the legal source of Korean decision making. So it's somewhat international law, including international law topics for that kind of how to say international agreement or some legislation of some foreign countries to be taken or understood as Korean source of legal authority. So there should be some more process. For example, about the international agreements, there should be some special, how to say, agreement in the Congress and our own version of legislation, like following GDPR topics, something like that. So as I explained, the revision of Korean 3 data law is following that kind of process because we were in need of GDPR kind of advancement, but that GDPR cannot be directly taken the legal source of Korean cases. So, but we can do that by our kind of new legislation or revision of our Private Information Act in Korea.
Thank you for the detailed answer.
Okay, so I hope that this was not too much details, but yeah, but I think it's much more much related to today's topics. Thank you for your good questions. Okay. So now, so we can say that we are sharing briefly the basic, how to say, jurisprudence understanding of the natural law or positive law system or civil law tradition or legal or common traditions. So with that, let me go more about some short history of jurisprudence, which can be quite interesting, I hope. So this is quite long story, like the tensions between natural law traditions versus legal positivism kind of traditions. So, for example, it's the story of Antigone. So it's before Christ, 5 centuries. For example, at Creon, the ruler of Thebes, were fighting in a political battle, of course, physical battle, and Creon got the winner positions, and with that authority, he made a decree so on the denial of honorable burial of traitor to Thebes. So and Polynicus and Eteocles were fighting against the Creon, and they lost the battle. So the two of them were understood as the traitor to Thebes. So the Creon, so with that decree, so denied the honorable burial. Antigone, the sister of Polynicus and Eteocles, and claimed that that there are some law. So even though, yes, I accept that Creon, so you are winner of this game, so you got the throne, and you have the legal authority to promulgate some decree. So people should follow that decree. But so as compared to that, so there are some, how to say, natural law, something like that. The conformity to the dictates of the nature, so which is requiring a proper barrier for people, not just in Tibet, maybe in the worldwide. So Antigone was claiming that there are some kind of natural law, so which can beat or which can be more prevalent, so without regard to the legal positive how to say situations. So even though in a legal positive way, so Creon was the winner and he has the authority to say what is law, but in the world of human beings, there are and there should be some natural law, so which is independent or which is uh, separate, and which can be quite transcendental version of justice or law. So this is quite the interesting beginning of the jurisprudence. So one, maybe Creon will claim that as the winner of game, or so as the with the authority as a king of Tibet. So I have the authority to say what is law or justice. So with that, so the Polynicus and Eteocles cannot be buried properly in the soil of Tibet, but Antigone is claiming something different. So which is quite interesting dialogue, maybe story. So this kind of this different ideas can found out from the Republic of Plato. So in that books, there's this story like there's some guy, his name is Thrasymachus. He's saying that if one reasons correctly, so one will come to agree that the just in the dikaion in the Greek is the same thing everywhere. So whatever is the profit or advantage of the material. So so this is following the legal positivism, and he's saying that um, might the power or might makes legal right, and nothing else can do. If I repeat, so Thrasymachus is saying that if one reasons correctly, so one will come to agree that the dikaion is the same thing everywhere. So whatever is to the profit or advantage of the mightier, so at that time or at that space. So different from this perspective, so we can find something like natural law dictation about the law or justice. And Socrates is proposing a conception of justice as something that man discovers rather than create. So that exists literally apart from him, so in the heavens of form. So this is following the stream of natural law or the belief in natural law. So still quite long time ago story, but maybe you can find that quite similar, different view on the topics of what is law or what is justice. So one is the natural law perspective. So the other one is more legal positivism perspective. So I'm not doing everyone. So we can also find out this discussion from the King James I versus Edward Coke. So who was the Chief Justice in the England at that time, or um, or the different ideas between the Blackstones or Jeremy Bentham. So let me go somewhat more in detail to Jeremy Bentham. So, um, so in the Middle Ages, maybe including the Blackstone's age, um, the 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 societies were not fully how to say the separation between but between the legal world and religion has not been fully separated, you know. So in the medieval ages, so every kind of daily life of people and the right way or the wrong way of life were fully decided by the voice of God or the what the God is ordering or not, or maybe people in the church were having that role of understanding and delivering the messages of the God. So even though that religion is a huge part in the modern societies also, but so the modern advanced countries trying their best to separate from that religious part and in daily part. And in the daily part, they are trying to make out their own kind of right or wrong answers, or what is just justice or what is law in a very different story from the voices of God. So I can say the main contribution of the Jeremy Bentham were like that kind of thing. So he wanted to refashion the law so into an instrument for maximizing the greatest happiness of the greatest number. So I mean, so Jeremy Bentham were trying to the law as an instrument for maximizing the happiness or the utility of people in that society. So that means he tried to separate the happiness or the justice, something like that, from the religion or kind of the different understanding in the when there were kind of noble person and unnoble person, something like that. So Jeremy Bentham were understanding the value of people's happiness or utilities are equal, so and all the same to everybody. So in that sense, the legal instrument, the law is an instrument to maximize the sum of that happiness or utility. So in the sense that utility is happiness is very neutral conceptions for legal instrument. So I can say that Jeremy Bentham is also following the legal positivist approach to these issues. So I will not go too much in detail. So, and Jeremy Bentham were quite suspicious about the natural law concept in Darwinian kind of age. And so he was curious. So if the common law did not come from the God, so where did it come from? And if not from the God or nature, so where could the common law have come? But from the judges. So in this sense, Jeremy Bentham was quite critical about the judges, how to say, rule making or legislative functioning. So because it's not based upon the people's will. So this is the story ongoing on, and the Supreme Court Justice Holmes in the United States. So there's another one noticeable person in this story. And this story goes into modern legal philosophy or legal jurisprudence with these different ideas like conventionalism, so which is fully following the legal positivist approach, and Hart, so the British legal philosopher, is the main figure. So in this um, way of thinking, so he is following that the 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 main source of legal authority is from the conventions made in the society. So for example, so if we were dealing with the privacy cases and which has no precedent or not much references, then the source of legal authority should be found out that the conventions in the society in dealing with that issues. And with the rule of recognitions, and some conventions can be brought up to the positions of law, and some conventions cannot be dependent of cannot be understood as the source of law. So this is the basic understanding, and I can say this is fully following the legal positivist approach. And the other kind of end of the jurisprudence is the Ronald Dworkin. So he was very, how to say, yeah, well-known professors and at the NYU at the last time. So he's claiming that every legal question has a right and wrong answers. And if some judges were, how to say, performing so the best performance as a judge, like Hercules, so he or she can find the principles and right or wrong answers, which is flowing. So in the huge stocks of cases. So and if the judges is performing his best, how to say, best power, then he can find out the legal system or legal framework, so which is following so-called the integrity in law, and which is following the principles. So this integrity or principles is not fully depending on the legal positivist way. So it's sought and can be found out by experience or legal activity ability as a lawyer in the judiciary. So this is quite different from legal positives. So I can say this is more following the natural law understanding of jurisprudence. And then there can be many questions or criticisms on his theory, like if the judge of Hercules is doing politics, so what should be done? What can be done? And what is the difference between principles versus public policy? And so what is right and wrong answers? And something like that is quite interesting questions and topics. So in the middle of that different ideas, we can find kind of legal pragmatism. So this is supported by Judge Richard Posner. He's the founder of Economic Analysis of Law in the Modern Jurisprudence, and these are his books. So this is very simple story of legal jurisprudence and legal philosophy, or ways to think about the answers, to find out answers to justice or law when in the hard cases. So the reason I was addressing this topic is like this. So as I mentioned, at the Lineage 2 case in the year of 2006, so I explained that there were not much references or precedent to find out the right answer to that questions. Somehow in the year of 2006, so I can say that I was following that some legal pragmatic way. So what could be the most, how to say, optimal damages amount? So what could be the social influence of this court ruling or something like that? So that influence could be socially improving or maybe or how much, how to say, not improving effect can be done. So this was my considerations. But so after coming to university and also again thinking about these issues, I was trying to apply that different attitude of jurisprudence, like conventionalism or legal pragmatism or law as integrity. And in this paper, so I was trying to apply those three different perspectives of jurisprudence to the Lineage 2 cases. So as a judge, if I were following the conventionalism, so what could be the conclusion or that's in that scenario? Or if I was following the legal pragmatism, so what should be the considering factors in the cases, and what could be the conclusion of legal court rulings? And another, so if I were kind of judge as a Hercules in the Dworkin, and what was the law as integrity? So how the kind of integrity could be found out or built up by judges, and what would be the court rulings could be. So this was my, how to say, more advanced questions to myself, and in this paper I tried to to broaden out the perspective and suggest some policy options too. So that was my some additional understanding. So maybe this was related to Yoon-Bin Che's the original questions. If I were the judges in the year of 2021, so what would my kind of way of consideration, or what would be my kind of perspective to deal with these questions? So, and I try to answer that questions with too much theoretical, but so I hope it should be some having some point of interest to you. Okay. Um, so okay. How about your ideas or your questions? So I know that not all of you are majoring law, so you are living in a very different world than lawyers, but maybe some of you, so this kind of topic could have been also very much interesting because nowadays we are living in the age of Korean societies about justice and fairness or something like that. And I guess all of you have full, how to say, curiosity about what is justice, what is fairness, so why this society is so unfair, or what should be done or something like that. But and I hope so this basic theoretical explanation could be some help to you. Or if I say related to your term papers, so all of you were doing research, wonderful research on AI applications, mostly biohealthcare applications, and as you were delving into, so all that applications having, how to say, ethical dilemma situations, and the conflict between value versus value, like accuracy or versus privacy, or like the conflict of how to say, efficiency versus privacy or something like that. So and you could see that the value of privacy were existing actually in almost every aspect of big data issues or AI applications, and it is raising very serious questions how to balance those conflicting values and how to solve out the right answer to yeah, that conflict. So without that, I'm not sure. So as I mentioned, in a technological way, so we are already far more advanced, but we need to solve out that normative or ethical or legal issues. So that is kind of one of the main issues and concern. So on top of that, so I want to hear maybe from some of you, maybe two or three of you. So I could see that some of you were analyzing the service of Whisper. So who is Lee Sung-hyun or Kwon Ik-jae? Is there?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Lee Sung-hyun, Kwon Ik-jae, I can see both of you. So can you give me some explanation of that Whisper service and whether there were kind of ethical dilemma situation related to privacy and how you were solving that dilemma situations? Could Sung-hyun or Ik-jae? So we can do that.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. The Whisper system is about AI-based earpiece to help those who are suffering from hearing issues. So the device is collecting the sounds surrounding the users. So they optimize those noise around the user and try to fit the optimized sounds to the people who are suffering from hearing loss. So what we focused was during collecting those sounds around users, there can be a lot of private sounds or private conversations and private information can be collected as well. So to deal and handle those information during the process of training, there should be some privacy issues. So that was our concern and the point that we thought of.
Okay, so good explanations of that service and dilemma situation. So without that, I can see that Sohyun Kim and maybe Khalil Karim have your own questions. Can I hear that, Sohyun Kim?
Hi, thank you for your lecture. It was really interesting, and it was really a pleasure to learn about those new I mean, for me, it was new concept of those law. And before asking those questions, actually, this is my very personal interest. So is it okay to have those questions, which is quite not so relevant for those term papers?
Oh, of course. So now it's open to every question. Yeah.
Yeah, because I have a question related to Hercules from the book of Dorwin. Was it Dorkin? Dorwin?
Yeah, Dworkin. So it's
Yeah,
about
Dorkin.
yeah, Rose Empire. So the huge name of as a book. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Actually, I think the lineage case was really important and is really important and will be really important because it's traits because it this case was really important because this was a new case for the judge. And because this case was new, judge could not rely on the conventions. But at the same time, judges could know what the real ideal is. That's why the legal pragmatism was the best option for them. And I think that's why you chose legal pragmatism perspective to make your own discretion.
Yeah.
And because in the next decade, AI era is coming, and those new cases, new accidents will be coming,
Yeah.
which means that judge will also see those new types of lineage case
Sure.
in next decades. So actually, that means that they will not be able to rely on conventionalism anymore,
Yeah.
or less than the past. But at the same time, you just gave us the question that what is the definition of the justice, or what is the definition of the fairness? But that kind of question is really hard to answer, even though there are some types of some feature of justice or fairness, maybe in abstract level, but we do not know what that should be in our daily lives.
Yeah.
So actually, law's integrity will also be really hard to apply in the future. So legal pragmatism will be still important in the future. That means that the judges will be really important. Their role will also be really more highlighted. But the thing is that those newness come over and over again. I think, in my opinion, the knowledge and experience of the judge should also be really more tremendous compared to the past.
Yeah.
But as far as I think, I came to think that will it be possible for a human being to have that kind of depth of knowledge and the variety of knowledge? And while I was wondering about that, I read the word Hercules, that superhuman intelligence stuff that Dworkin suggested. And that reminded me of the image of AI judge. Although I think that sprint being kind of thing will not be possible in our reality, but at least some AI judge which surface human beings at certain points can appear to our daily lives or legal field. So I was wondering, what do you think about those, the idea of AI judge or their probability? Will there be any ethical issues related to that? So maybe this kind of questions can be the quasi Hercules or semi Hercules stuff.
Oh, so wow. So yeah. So hugely wonderful questions. So which is covering so many topics, which is covering almost everything about law. So before how to say, you were raising quite many critical issues, including the judge as Hercules. Like so you may be quite curious, what is the shape of the judge Hercules? Is it kind of he or she, or in what kind of educational background or bar examination? So that kind of judges can be chosen and selected to that position to deal with that optimal cases. Or you might have in your mind, so if the system is not working that kind of perfectly, like judges who is far from Hercules is somehow in charge of that critical cases. So what would be the conclusions, and what would be the social kind of influence of the kind of wrongful decision making by the judges? Maybe I'm not sure, but this should also in your mind, right?
So your question is what type of
No, no, no.
Herculean stuff that I,
No, no. So I mean, so this kind of curiosity are
Yeah.
also in your mind, right? So okay.
right.
Yeah. So on that stream, so you were mentioning about the AI judges or something, or at least AI lawyers. What could be, yeah, their functioning. So before going into more detail, so let me go back to the story of Judge Holmes, and I can show you that. How to say? So before that, so Langder, so he's the name of the dean of Harvard Law School. So now, even now, the library of Harvard Law School is a so-called Langder Library. So in that much, he's affecting very much to U.S. jurisprudence, and the main contribution was defining or developing so-called Socratic method in legal education or something like that. And I can say that he's following quite formalistic way of legal issues. So in that stream, so he was developing kind of formalistic way of understanding law, or as I mentioned, the discerning or differentiating of cases or comparing cases. So much of this is the influence of Langder. And I can say, so with this kind of special or formalistic way, so Langder was claiming that the law students can find out the right answers or wrong answers to legal topics. So let me briefly explain that. But the Judge Holmes was, yeah, he's yeah, very respected judge, and yeah, and he was very he was not liking the kind of formalistic approach to law, and he was saying that there are three repelling features of formalism. So the first one, the conceptualism and scientificism, or the static quality of formalism, or the separation of law from right. So even though the formalists can say have their own words, but Holmes was understanding that the formalistic understanding of judges, like pretending they know everything about law, and they can find out, I don't know, something like a black box theme or like that, like defining the concept and then dogmatics and like how to say mathematical way. So just inputting the features of the fact. So they say that they can find out the right answer to law in a very formalistic way. And Holmes was not much like this way. So the Judge Holmes was living the age of the century of Darwin, Spencer, Hegel, Marx, or Nietzsche. So Holmes thought that the best judges was the one. So Holmes thought that the best judge was the one who shaped the law to conform the most closely to, so even to anticipate the desires of the dominant groups in that community who jumped on the history bandwagon. So this is the wordings in the Common Law, which is quite famous book of Holmes. And he was believing the importance of the evolution of law. So law should not be static in a formalistic way. And he was believing that the law should not be an obstacle to social change, right? So for example, you know, especially in this class, you understand the technology and big data or AI is technologically and socially changing and developing quite a very fast way. And we can guess that the judges in the court cannot be fully following the speed. But somehow, so this AI ethical issues, when this comes to legal issues, then this case comes to the court in front of judges, and the judges are demanded to make an answer to their questions. But if you could imagine some judge like Hercules in Dawkins' book, yes, he or she knows everything, and she knows the integrity in law and the principles maintaining everything. So with that expectation, so another kind of formalistic way of thinking about law can be framed in a very ideal way. But Judge Holmes was quite curious on that topics, and he's claiming that the judges should not be at least obstacle to social change or the evolution of the societies in a good way. And so this is the basic beginning of So-hyun Kim's answers. Then we can go to another stage. Then judges should not be an obstacle. So how what can be done? And for the judges to do that kind of functioning, what kind of training system and selecting system of judges we should have? Like me, so when I was judge, so I had passed the traditional bar examination, so which was quite tough, like maybe every year less than 300 persons among like 30,000 or 40,000 applicants, which so so I'm yeah, but but there was no guarantee that among those selected people and who got the highest grade in the judicial institutions, so they can be judged in a very young age. But there are no guarantee that judges um, can deal with this, how to say, lineage to case or AI cases or something like that. So there was no guarantee. Then in that kind of context, so we should think about legal pragmatism or conventionalism. So, but still there are another deep story about what is pragmatic or what is the convention, so which is recognized by the rule of recognition, and that rule of recognition is how it is made and by whom. So this is another very difficult but quite interesting another story. But I can say this is the guiding way to think about So-hyun Kim's questions. After that, so you were mentioning about the AI judges. Actually, I don't think that the judges can be fully substituted by AI even in the future. I'm not sure. So even though technology has been quite fully developed, I don't think that our society will take in that role functioning to be given to AI system. I'm not sure, but at least the AI mechanism can help a lot to discuss and to find out relevant materials and some guideline point. But in this streamline, the traditional jurisprudence theory like conventionalism or natural law or legal positivism mystic way can be almost exactly can be how to say can be given to that technological questions, because there is it's quite new questions, but it is also based upon the traditional old questions. So, but the issue is how we can modify or reshape the kind of traditional story to a more modern or technological perspective. So I can say, so this is kind of prima facie answers to your questions as of now. Okay.
Thank you for your answer.
Thank you for your wonderful questions. And Karim, do you have other questions?
I think my question is a little bit more suitable for next class, so I think I'm going to ask my question next class if you don't mind.
Oh, okay, good. So we will deal with your questions maybe next class. So yeah, so this was quite brief, but quite interactive and quite full of important topics in legal jurisprudence dialogue. So I was very much amazed and impressed by your quick understanding of these quite new and legal topics, and so thank you very much about that. And so I hope and I expect that this kind of legal stories, how it can be applied to your term papers and how it can be applied to the newly developed AI service, and how it can be applied to ethical dilemma situations, how to find out that balancing of values. So because that was exactly what people were wondering and questioning each other, so even from the time of Antigone or Socrates or something like that. So so we cannot say what would be the future, but at least I can say that these difficult technological questions will be still quite, the solutions for these questions will be fairly based upon the kind of traditional legal jurisprudence. So that is why I prepared these topics. So even though this could feel somewhat strange to you, but so I'm surely hope and surely hope that this can help your your understanding your topics in a more broadened way. Before wrapping up the class, so let me raise one more quite interesting topic. So when we talk about AI or big data issues like automated driving or automating and diagnosing in healthcare issues, or kind of some, how to say, in many AI related services. So we are firstly and very easily worried about the failure, or even though in a probabilistic way, so that number should be very low, but somehow that kind of failure happens in that AI system or big data system. So what would be, how to say, the measures to take care of, and what would be solutions to deal with that issues? Because different from the past generation calculations in the AI system based upon machine learning or deep learning, so we cannot track back to the stage when that failure really happened, because it's done in a very machine way and deep learning way, right? So just we are feeding just the data, and AI system is self-learning, and they provide some solutions, and we know that mostly the solutions are quite accurate, efficient, and very convenient. But somehow they bring about, how to say, in an ethical way perspective, or something like that. They provide, seems like to provide wrong answers, or giving some failure like that, like in a kind of differentiation in a hiring mechanism, or something like that. So we are curious about how to deal with that failure. But before that, so one thing we should think about is that that failure is basically related to or based upon the data packages provided in that algorithm, right? and we can say that the data packaging is based upon the real decision making in the daily life of real people. So that was exactly what we were dealing in every day, right? In hiring or driving or in whatever way, something like that. But you know, if you see other, or if I see um, myself, so without any, how to say, false statement, so we can say each other and to ourselves, so that we are not 100% ethical ourselves, or genuinely perfectly good people, right? So we know that as human beings, we are all very weak person, and we are quite jealous. We find out when quite jealous feelings when we see some other people's success or something like that, or especially in the modern ages, in the young people's group, in whatever position they are located, they maybe try to differentiate themselves from other people to be in a, how to say, higher position or in a better position or something like that. So we are not purely moral or purely ethical in 100%. So not just individually, but in the groups as a whole. And the data in the real decision making will be considering that exact truth of ourselves, right? Then when some AI system is providing so-called wrong answers, which is differentiating some colored people or weak people or something like that. In some sense, they are not actually providing wrong answers. They may be too much following or too much providing the exact mind or exact choices of people in the real world. Then what we should do about that? So before AI or before mechanic societies, so that kind of biases or how to say, some negative aspect of people in ourselves has been socially maybe treated by moral norms or ethical, how to say, requirement or something like this. They were controlled by some human design, social, how to say, social orderings or something like that. They could, that maybe culturally or politically correctness or something like that. But data and AI and machine are quite separate from them. Maybe in the future, so hugely developed technology and AI is providing actually too much exact answers to of the real people's mind or of the real people's choices. Then how they can be understood in the overall social systems, or what can be done or what cannot be done. So actually, so that is quite another actually more important questions and topics. I mean, the AI system is reflecting too much exactly what is existing in our or in the human being's mind. So I guess I imagine that that is quite as much critical issues as much as the fallacy or failure of technological failure of the AI system. So I hope so every one of you so also think about that topics, or maybe I hope we have another chance to discuss that topics too. Okay, so let's wrap it up as such today's class. So I hope everyone of you wonderful evening, and see you next Monday.
Thank you.